I'm Don Nielsen. I'm chairman and owner of a company called Light Doctor, and we're in the commercial lighting business, serving clients throughout the Pacific Northwest.
How do you define success?
Doing something you love, much more than making lots of money. A lot of people make lots of money and aren't very happy. In my mind, that's not very much success. So I would say doing something you love, and that involves both what you do for a living, but with whom you do it. And so there's two aspects of success. So one of the things you want to try to do, at least I think, is find something that is absolutely turns you on, something that makes you passionate, and then build a team around it that you love working with. And that's success. And you will be successful if you do that. You know, the old adage, put the right people on the bus, it works.
Where did your inspiration come from?
It's a good question. I'm not sure I can say specifically, but I grew up in a family where both of my parents were immigrants. And we never had much, but they really worked hard. And in our day, there was no unemployment insurance. There was very little Social Security. There was no, and of course we had no family. In fact, I was over 30 before I met a relative. So it was, you were on your own. So I learned early on, you work really hard and you take care of yourself, and if you make it, you make it, and if you don't, you don't. But it's your own deal. And so I think my inspiration to work hard, try hard, came from both my dad and my mother, because in both cases they were, they just really worked. And my wife complains to me that I don't know how to retire because I keep working. And I told my kids, I told my wife, I'll never retire. I may do something different, but I'll never retire. I keep saying there's no money in it, number one. And number two, there's no future in it, number two. So why bother? So anyhow, I think I'd have to credit my parents.
How did you move from idea to something actually succeeding in the marketplace?
If I were really honest, I'd say blind luck. We started off with an idea of what I'm doing now is running a lighting company, but my prior occupation was running a biomedical research and testing company. And I would have to say we were as lucky as we were good, but the combination worked. And we ended up doing something entirely different than what we started out doing. And so the other thing that I've learned in my life is and we lived someplace totally different than I thought we would live. And so two things I've learned in my life. One is you can't necessarily predict what it is you're going to become passionate about and successful in doing. And number two, it's very hard to dictate where you do that, because the market, if you're passionate about your business, the market may tell you that you're in the wrong location. And in our case, we started a company in Seattle, but ended up in Virginia. And the reason for Virginia was we were within 500 miles of 90% of our clients. When we were in Seattle, we were within 2,000 miles of 90% of our clients, so it just didn't work. But we never grew up or intended to move to Virginia. That was never in the game plan, but it became a necessity. In this case, in this company's program, we bought a company that was geographically based where we wanted to live, but was a business that pertained to virtually every other business in the market. And so it seemed like a rare opportunity to go into a business where virtually everybody is your potential client. I like that kind of a situation. And so the idea to buy this company was based on owning an operating company for the family. But the idea of selling energy efficiency to every business in the Northwest, that's a pretty easy idea. I don't take credit for that, but I do take credit for trying to figure out a way to capitalize on it. So I would have to say that in my business career, it hasn't been so much the ideas as it has been the opportunities that crept into my spectrum that allowed me to move into directions that I might not otherwise have done so, but moved in directions that became very passionate for me. So,
How did you organize your team?
well, that question implies that when we started out, we knew exactly what we were doing. Maybe some people do, but I have to tell you, I didn't. And so we didn't organize our team at the get-go. We evolved the team as the business required it. And that's the same case that's going on here. It's an evolutionary task. But we didn't start our business with a group of people all organized as a team. In fact, it was myself, my partner, and an assistant. And that was what started the company, the old company. And in this case, we bought a company that was already existing. So it would be tough for me to answer that question as if we planned out the team, because I would have to say in no case at the outset did we plan the team. The team evolved over time, and I think in most businesses that's the case. Now, unless you have a great idea, some of these high-tech people get 2 or 3 people together and then they pursue a particular idea and technology. And in that case, you really want some very smart people to know exactly what you want to have done. But that was not my case. And I'm not sure that's the case in most startup businesses. I would say most entrepreneurs start with an idea or an opportunity, and then their team evolves.
If you could have, what would you have done differently?
It's a good question. And I don't know. There's a lot of business decisions I would have done differently. And by that I mean, I would say the biggest problem in business is personnel issues, our personnel issues. And as I look back in my business career, I would say in several cases I would have moved faster and more directly in making personnel actions, taking personnel actions. But having said that, the road I traveled in my earlier career and in this career were not roads that I anticipated. But they're not roads that I would necessarily do differently, and so I think in my answer to the question, it would more relate to business decisions I made along the way that I necessarily might have done differently, knowing what I now know. We had one situation where we bought a company in Chicago that happened to be in the nuclear energy related business, and shortly after we got it really moving and really rolling, 3 Mile Island happened, and the entire market was decimated in 24 hours. I mean, it was like the business died, like it was never there. As you look back on it, you say, well, we shouldn't have bought that business, you know. But who is to know? So I think I'd say the biggest regrets I have is not making personnel decisions faster. I think it cost us a lot of money.
What makes a great entrepreneur?
That's a good question. I've thought a lot about that question. The entrepreneurs that I have known there's certain kinds of entrepreneurs. We have entrepreneurs that are really motivated by money and by profit, and in many cases by prestige. So they're motivated in one way. There's others who have been motivated by building quality companies. And those people are not so interested in the money necessarily, but they know that they can't build a quality company without making lots of money or making good money. And so they focus on that report card, but that's not what motivates them. And in my case, I'm more motivated in trying to figure out how to meet a client's requirements at a profit. And I think an entrepreneur wants to do it themselves. They want to be responsible and accountable for the success of whatever it is they're doing. And they generally find that difficult to do as a salaried or hourly employee. And so they pick up an idea, or they pick up a small business, or they start a small business. And then they go from there. But I think the motivations of entrepreneurs vary as much as there are entrepreneurs, and so it's very difficult to answer that as a generic question with a generic answer. I don't think there is a generic answer. I think everybody's different. But my own sense is that the people who are motivated more by what they're doing and how they're going about doing it than worrying about how much money they make, in my mind, build better companies and are better people.
What role did education have in your success?
A lot. But education is not just academic. So I started out by talking about my parents. Humongous amounts of learning occurred in my house that had nothing to do with academics. Ethics, work ethics, honesty, integrity, reliability, all of those kinds of traits, which I think are critical traits in any activity of humankind. Those all came from home more so than anywhere else. Academically, absolutely. I received a reasonably good K-12 education, a pretty good bachelor's education, and a very good master's education. In each case, I think I was enhanced in my ability to manage an organization and to manage people. But I would say that the kind of person you are is a lot more dependent on some of the other stuff than academics. So still to this day, I'm more interested in a person's personhood than in their academic prowess, if you will. And so education is a very broad term. And the degree to which an individual has some really life skills will depend, in my mind, how successful they become.
So finally, what is the most important question we did not ask you and your answer?
I think the question you didn't ask is, why did I do it? And I'm not sure I can tell you exactly why I did it, but I was driven early on to be successful at something. And that grew out again of my home. My dad, particularly my dad, struggled to ensure a living for us and struggled to ensure an opportunity for my brother and I. But that was basically what he did. He gave us that opportunity. I was bound and determined to make sure that his work was not in vain. And so I think the thing that motivated me almost more than anything was to do something that caused him to be, rewarded for what he did. And I think he was.